TCU has a couple big official visitors for their 2025 class. Can the Frogs cash in on recruiting in 2025? We'll talk about that next round. Locked On Horned Frogs, it's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, that's right, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'd also love it if you subscribe wherever it is you listen to podcasts and its audio variety. We're going to cover a lot of ground today. We got a big weekend at TCU Athletics coming up. We're actually going to start with some recruiting talk. A 5-star offensive tackle will be visiting TCU later on here in the recruiting process. Frogs also getting a visitor from big-time Shadow Creek linebacker. So we'll get to that. Also, do want to talk about Big 12 basketball, specifically the TCU Horned Frogs. The men went 1-1 in the Big 12 tournament. I think they did what they have to do to feel really good about being a lock for the tournament and finding out where they're going to go on Selection Sunday. They beat Oklahoma in the first game of the tournament by a final score of 80-71. And then they allegedly played a basketball game against Houston yesterday. I actually thought the effort and intensity was really good by TCU, but they had maybe the worst shooting night a basketball team could have, and they lost 60-45. Houston, of course, is also really good defensively, so they fall the number one team in the country, split the season series with the Houston Cougars, but I don't think that's going to do anything to their seeding. We'll get to that, though, in segment 2, TCU Baseball, with a series against Oklahoma starting tonight, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as they try to get their Big 12 record back in the right place after dropping 2 of 3 to Kansas last weekend. We're going to start with some football talk, though. And kind of big picture, I want to look at a couple visitors that are coming to TCU's campus in the near future in the 2025 class and really just discuss how, especially on defense, philosophically, with the new system with Andy Avalos, how this could benefit the Frogs. I saw this news on Twitter yesterday. Anthony Deuce Williams, an outside linebacker from Shadow Creek. Shadow Creek is one of the newer schools in Houston ISD area. They've been super successful. They put out great talent, great athletes each and every year. He simply tweeted locked in with a frog emoji, and it's a video that I imagine TCU sent him. It's edited really nicely, a 10-second video where it just says he's going to make an official visit to TCU's campus. Now, a few things to know about Anthony. First off, he is currently a Texas commit. He made that commitment on January 1st, saying Longhorn Nation, I'm coming, hook him. He said he's 1,000% committed. So he's currently committed to Texas. But what I was really interested in with this official visit, a good chance for TCU to make some inroads there, possibly change his mind. The main thing I was watching, though, Anthony Williams is a very athletic outside linebacker. He makes plays, at the line of scrimmage. He makes plays in space. He can cover. A lot of the huddle highlights that I was watching of him, he makes big-time plays, like at the point of attack, especially when teams are trying to get to the edge in the run game, or like speed option, read option type plays. And he doesn't – he kind of plays on the line, but he's in a stand-up position. He seems like a really good candidate. I wonder where TCU would kind of slot him in the defense, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that when he gets there on campus. But he looks like a perfect candidate for possibly the stud linebacker position. Now, he's currently listed at 185 pounds. As I've learned through doing the show, the measurables on 247, not always super accurate because I've had many people be like, hey, this wide receiver you talked about is actually 6 feet tall. Okay, fine. But the information I have is that Anthony Williams is over 6 feet tall. He's 185 pounds. But, do you put some muscle on him, some weight on him, and have him play as that stud outside linebacker where he's being asked to make plays in space, but he's also particularly rushing the passer? And one thing that stood out to me this offseason so far, Blake Brockermeyer wrote a good piece in the 247 on 247 where he talked to Sonny Dykes and he talked to the coaching staff about making the change from Joe Gillespie to Andy Avalos. Of course, a lot of us were frustrated with Joe Gillespie and his lack of aggression, mainly just not bringing much pressure, frequently only rushing 3 down linemen in the 3-3-5 set that he had. His defensive linemen were taking a lot of double teams. Even the DNs were frequently playing in a 4-eye technique, which is basically inside shoulder at the tackle. It's tough to make plays off the edge when you're constantly just aligned in the interior and you're having to take on multiple blockers and break through double teams and make plays. So one thing that I'm excited about with Andy Avalos, you're going to have more 4 and 5 down fronts. Avalos is known for putting pass rushers in good one-on-one situations to make plays. And this is hopefully something that TCU can start selling in recruiting. If you're an athletic player, if you're a player that has position flexibility, that can make plays in space, but can also play up on the line of scrimmage, can be someone in run support, and can use their athleticism to get off the edge and give tight ends and tackles fits by getting around them, using your power and speed to wreak havoc on the quarterback, then this is a good defense to play in. And I think this is the type of player that we're going to see more making these visits, being interested in TCU because of what they're being asked to do in this defense. It's not so much keeping everything in front of you, trying to rally to the ball. And as we saw last season, even though that was the intention of that defense, they still struggled to make things, to give up big plays. They still struggled. They gave up big plays. They got beat over the top. There were a lot of long passes, and a lot of that was teams were able to run long developing routes. They felt comfortable allowing their receivers to work to get open down the field because they knew there wasn't a lot of pressure coming from the defensive line. So I think this year is going to be a great measuring stick on where we are personnel-wise. I feel like there's some talented guys in that D-line room that can make some things happen, and they're going to be given better opportunities this year to make some splash plays. But if you can develop some good numbers from your pass rushers, that's definitely going to help you in recruiting. And I don't know what's going to happen with Anthony Williams. As I said, he's currently committed to Texas, but he's at least making the visit to TCU. He has interest in the Frogs. He's going to hear out what they have to say about this new defense and the opportunities that are there for him. So I think that's an exciting factor moving forward for Sonny Dykes and his coaching staff. Jeremy Clark has also reported that Ty Haywood from Denton Ryan, offensive tackle, 6'5", 285 pounds, 5-star player. I mean, if you go look at Ty Haywood's page, he looks like a starting left tackle in college football right now. He's going to make an official visit to TCU. Now, he told Jeremy Clark, 247 Sports, he didn't know exactly what the date was off the top of his head, but he said he's had good communication with offensive line coach A.J. Ricker, and that he's got him on the list. He's going to make a visit to TCU and, at least hear them out, hear what they have to say. Haywood's getting offers from everywhere: Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Texas, the list goes on. To say this would be a competitive recruitment would be an understatement. Like, this is a dude that everybody in the nation is chasing after. I'm not sure where TCU is in the pecking order with him, but I'll say this. When it comes to NIL money and NIL resources, the staff has made it pretty clear that they value giving NIL money to players that have experience. They've been allocating a lot of those funds to player retention and to also getting guys in the transfer portal who have had college playing experience, who've played a lot of snaps, who understand what it takes to get it done at this level of college football. And they haven't risked a whole lot in the high school ranks because there is an inherent risk when you're giving, allocating funds to guys who you have to develop and get on the field immediately. This is the type of player that I would give a heavy investment to because I am much more comfortable investing in guys that can play on the O-line and D-line than I am in the skill positions, because that's how you build a good team. You build your team from the inside out. And if you have a guy who can be a road grader in the run game and can also protect your quarterback on the edge, that's a huge benefit. So I'm sure that'll be part of the discussion. I'm not positive what the offer is going to be or all those things, but I just know Flying T Club, this is the type of guy in my mind that I would seriously go after from a monetary standpoint, because I just think it's a much safer investment than in some of your skill players, especially in the league now that I just believe the way the recruiting is trending and what the differences in recruiting is going, it's going to be tough for all these Big 12 schools to get high-end offensive linemen. And I'm excited about what TCU is doing in that O-line room. I think they're developing well. I feel like a lot of the guys that they are offering and signing at this point are going to be good players. It's just going to take them a little while to get to a place where they can contribute. But Ty Haywood, in my mind, seems like the type of guy that you can put on the field right away and would be an outstanding player for you. So a couple notes there on the offensive side of the ball. And recruiting for the 2025 class as TCU continues to try and build that class and get it to a place where, they're in the top 20 or 30 again, like they have been the past few seasons. When we come back, TCU basketball. On Wednesday, I did a show about what the Frogs would need to do to make a deep postseason run. I think they're officially in the NCAA tournament. What they did yesterday is not a good recipe for a run. We'll talk about that next. You're in Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. Did you know that even if you have a 401k through retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, claim as Q1 of 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Again, that website, robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood, official sponsor here of the Locked On Network. TCU basketball, the men, they went to Kansas City to play in the Big 12 tournament, and they handled their business in game one against Oklahoma. Against a shorthanded OU team, won that game. Emmanuel Miller was fantastic. He had 27 points. Chuck O'Bannon had a good night shooting the basketball. He had 11 points. He was 3 of 6 from the field. Team struggled late in that game to kind of close it out, but they made their free throws down the stretch to put it away. And overall, really led start to finish and played good basketball. So with that win, I feel like TCU is firmly in the tournament. Latest projections I've seen, Joe Lunardi has them as a 9 seed going out to Los Angeles, and they would play FAU, who's the 8 seed, which would be a tough matchup. FAU is a Final Four team last year. They're 24-7 this season. They're 14-4 in conference play. That's a good Owl squad that you'd be playing around one. If they got past that, according to Lunardi's projections, they'd be playing Tennessee, 1 seed from the SEC. And of course, Tennessee has been a great program for a few years now with Rick Barnes at the helm. But that's the projection Lunardi has. Jerry Palm from CBS Sports also has TCU as a 9 seed playing FAU. I believe the 1 seed he hasn't projected against, though, is UNC. So tough all around, but, that's what happens when you're on the 8 or 9 line in the tournament. But TCU got the win over Oklahoma. Yesterday, they played Houston, and it could have gone better. They lost to the Cougars 60-45. It was not that close. TCU scored 15 points in the first half. It took them 10 minutes to score their first points. Not 10 minutes to score their first points from the field. It took them 10 minutes to score their first points. Micah Peavy had an offensive rebound and a putback. Houston went on a 16-0 run to start the game. TCU was 17 of 73 shooting the basketball. I mean, that's it's hard to do that if you were trying to miss shots. 17 of 73, 2 of 20 from 3. I honestly thought the effort and intensity was pretty good. They out-rebounded Houston. Now, part of that is when you miss 56 shots, there's opportunities to get rebounds, right? But I thought they did a good job of crashing the boards, making things happen. I felt like the defense, for the most part, was pretty solid. I mean, they held Houston to 60 points. Now, that game was kind of a rock fight, and that's sort of where Houston lives. So once it got to that point, they took care of their business. And, I mean, Houston's got the best defense in the nation. That's what they do. They guard the heck out of you. Kelvin Sampson, they hang their hat on that. But this team just struggles so much in the half court at times. And they got open looks early in that ball game, and they missed a few. And then the drought started to, compile. And you could tell, the last 5 or 6 minutes of that scoring drought, TCU was just forcing it. I mean, it was in their heads. Like they knew, oh gosh, we haven't scored. We have to find a way to score the basketball here. And it just kind of compounded on itself and eventually finally broke through and made a little bit of a run to cut it to 10. And then Houston pushed the lead out to 16 at halftime. And in the second half, started with another scoring drought and, had no chance. Emmanuel Miller went down with what appeared like an ankle injury and hobbled off the court, but he ended up returning. Wasn't super effective. He did play the second half, though. And in my mind, that's the biggest news. Like if Emmanuel Miller was hurt, and I guess we still kind of have to watch what his status is. But if he was unable to go on round one because of an injury, then this team's just completely cooked. I mean, like he's their best player. He's been their most consistent player. He gives great effort. That would have been a disaster. So the fact that he was able to bounce back, get under his own power, and play the rest of that basketball game is a huge plus. I mean, I'm never going to excuse a loss. Houston's a great team. You just had a horrible shooting night. I mean, big picture issue is this is once again just a team that's very athletic and can get out and run, but they don't have spot-up shooters. They don't have a lot of guys that can create off the bounce. And so when the game gets tight and you're forced to execute in a slowed down half-court situation, they just continue to struggle. And when they play teams that can match their athleticism and can get up and down the court with them, like obviously Houston can, then it just makes for a pretty brutal matchup for them because they can't force turnovers and get out and run like they typically do. They forced a few turnovers. I mean, they turned Houston over some times, but they couldn't really get out there and finish in transition. And so it just made for a rough night. I don't think they're going to go 17 of 73 against anybody in the tournament, but there's some offensive limitations there at times. Ernest Uday looks good, so I think that's a plus. It feels like he's integrated back into this team, and now you just sort of wait to see what your draw is, and where you're going to go, what 1 or 2 seed you might play in round 2, and then you just go from there. But I think overall, TCU did what they had to do in the Big 12 tournament. I was not happy with yesterday's effort, but at the end of the day, okay, go get some rest, try to regroup, recalibrate, and get ready for the NCAA tournament coming up next week. But, yeah, just an awful night shooting the basketball. And, again, like I thought they played pretty well defensively. I felt like they made a lot of effort plays, rebounding the basketball, just could not make shots. And Trey Tennyson is struggling right now. And he's like – yeah, Chuck O'Bannon can stretch the floor at times, but he's such a streaky shooter that it's really just depending on the night whether or not he's going to give you the ability to space the floor. Tennyson is just not hitting open shots. He's struggling on defense. I mean, Avery Anderson has completely disappeared. This team was rolling pretty well in January. They're not playing great basketball right now. And I would love for that to switch up and change. And I think you saw some good flashes against Oklahoma, but that was an Oklahoma team that was dealing with injuries that I think was kind of looking to get out of there and get home as soon as possible, even though they're technically, a bubble team. And still in the moments where you really needed to kind of push that lead out and separate, you couldn't do it because of some of the limitations on the offensive side of the ball. But we'll see where they end up on Selection Sunday as Jamie Dixon's team gets ready for presumably a third tournament appearance in 3 seasons. First time they've ever done that. So that's an accomplishment for sure. Would love to see them make it to the second weekend. It's going to be a tough battle because, again, just not going to be super highly seeded in the NCAA tournament. We'll wrap up with some baseball talk next. It's Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. March Madness is coming up, and one of our great sponsors, Nissan, they're bringing you March Madness highlights. It's brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're going to pick a team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest, just like any of these, just like all the new 2024 Nissan SUVs. These teams were able to take it to the next level. I know Horned Frog fans don't really want to hear about them, but the Houston Cougars do stand out. They're as hardcore as it gets out there, similar to the Nissan Armada. So it's no wonder they're expected to land a top seed in the tournament after their first season in the Big 12. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your big adventure at shopusa.com. March Madness brought to you by the new 2024 SUVs at Nissan, shopusa.com, and go on your next big adventure today. So things to watch as TCU Baseball takes on Oklahoma tonight. First off, hopefully the weather holds up. I know, Central Texas where I'm at, we're supposed to get some storms. Looks like we might miss them today, but tomorrow and Sunday there's supposed to be some rain and storms. So hopefully everything holds up and they can get games in. Peyton Tolle had a hamstring injury against Kansas, had to exit that game early, didn't end up hitting the rest of the weekend, and didn't make an appearance in the midweek game either. So kind of up in the air what his status is for tonight. He's been your Friday starter. Cole Klecker on Saturday, and I believe Braden Sloan's going to get the start on Sunday. Oklahoma is 10-6. They are coming off 2 midweek games. They beat UT Arlington 5-1. Ended up losing to Oklahoma State in the midweek contest 14-5. They swept UCF in their first conference series of the year, so they're 3-0 in conference play. And UCF was coming into that series riding high after a big series win of their own the week before. So chance to get back at home. Hopefully that's a good thing for TCU. I want to see what Braden Sloan does on Sunday. He struggled against Kansas last week, but there were some defensive errors in the first inning that sort of extended that inning. Would love to see Peyton Tolle and Cole Klecker go deep into a game for once. I mean, it's been a struggle all year getting past the 5th or the 6th. This bullpen has constantly been asked to get back in there, I wonder what Luis Rodriguez's status is this weekend, as he threw a lot of pitches against DBU on Tuesday. But that was a good win against the Patriots on Tuesday night. Benefited from some sloppy defense by DBU, but TCU had some errors and some miscues on the defensive side of the ball as well. So good series between TCU and Oklahoma coming up this weekend. We'll have coverage of that on Monday. Also, we'll find out what TCU's matchup is in the bracket, so we'll break down that and plenty of TCU football news. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. It's your team every day.